Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. I do have one quick favor before we get to the video that you came here for, and that is very simply this. You see that little red subscribe button below this video? Go ahead, smash that subscribe button. It really does help me. It really does help this channel grow and my audience grow. So go ahead and hit that red subscribe button. And now, here is the video that you came here for. Pick of the day. And the topic of the day, it is a man who very much has basically a permanent place on the Aaron Torres Sports Podcast, a guy that I talk about a lot, Greg Sankey, the commissioner of the SEC. And what I would say about Greg Sankey, in general, I have an immense amount of respect for this guy. And I've talked about it before. I don't know if college football gets played in 2020 if it isn't for Greg Sankey. And I give him a lot of credit. He has almost become the face of college sports, and I certainly think that he has become the most powerful person in college sports, especially as we transition out of the Mark Emmert era over the next couple months to year. He being Greg Sankey, is going to have a huge say in what the future of college sports looks like, the future of the college football playoff, all that good stuff. But one thing that has become increasingly clear over the last couple months is that it appears as though Greg Sankey is really kind of pushing behind the scenes for some sort of change to the college basketball NCAA tournament, the one that we all know and love, March Madness, 68 teams, Final Four, all that good stuff. About a month ago, all these rumors kind of started. We actually talked about them a little bit on last Wednesday's show. But Jeff Goodman, Stadium Sports, Field of 68, great college basketball reporter. He put out a report about a month ago, I think it was right around while I was on vacation, that Greg Sankey was kind of behind the scenes pushing to eliminate the automatic bids from the NCAA tournament. So rather than having the 68 teams where you get 30 or 31 teams that qualify by winning their conference tournaments, instead it's just 68 teams total, 68 best teams, and we all know why he would want to do something like that. To get the most SEC teams in possible, to make the most money for his conference possible, and squeeze out the little guy. Well, when Jeff Goodman put out that report, it got a ton of backlash. It got a ton of pushback. And so on Friday, Greg Sankey did go on the record, did speak to Sports Illustrated's Pat Forty, and put a slightly different twist on what he hopes to see from the future of college basketball's NCAA tournament. Now, he did say that he wants to keep automatic bids in the NCAA tournament. But what he also did say is that he thinks it's time to reconsider what the NCAA tournament looks like. And his idea is the possibility of expansion. Now, he didn't explicitly say this. He wasn't as quoted as saying this in the article, but I get the sense that he maybe told Pat Forty this and didn't want to be quoted, is that expansion in his mind maybe looks like instead of 68 teams, we go to 80. The way that we play that first four with teams currently 65 through 68, we now do 65 through 80. So essentially 16 teams kind of playing their way into the NCAA tournament, almost four first fours, if you will. And while he didn't explicitly say that, it's clear that he wants us to rethink the college basketball tournament and rethink expansion and rethink expansion and add more teams to the NCAA tournament. Really quickly, his arguments for expanding the college basketball NCAA tournament is pretty straightforward. One, he references Ole Miss winning the college baseball tournament a few weeks ago. Ole Miss, for people who do not know, was the last team in the field in the NCAA tournament. And basically what Greg Sankey asks is a pretty straightforward question. Are we possibly leaving out teams that can win this thing the way that Ole Miss won it? And is there a way to get more teams in to make it more of a national event, get more teams involved, all that good stuff? Well, before I tell you why I hate the idea of expansion, let's just get a couple things out of the way. One, Greg Sankey does not want to expand this thing to make it the most equitable, fair tournament possible. It's to get, instead of 7 SEC teams, it's to get 8, 9, 10 in. And also, I found it very ironic that he said to Pat Forty that he was not granting the interview to, quote, make headlines. Well, if he didn't want to make headlines, he didn't have to do the interview. Instead, it appears as though he very much wants to make headlines. And the way that I read this article was he got so much pushback on the idea of eliminating automatic bids that I think he's kind of trying to just feel out what the reaction would be to expansion. I get the sense that this was kind of you throw your I'm not a fisher, but you throw your cast in the water and see what you can get. And I think this was kind of to see how far that he can push this thing What can I do to make more money off the NCAA tournament without pissing everybody off? And so let's get into it, and let me just start. I'm just going to I'm not going to beat around the bush any longer. I absolutely hate the idea of the NCAA tournament expansion. I think it's perfect the way it is. And so let's get into why, while I greatly respect Greg Sankey, he is just dead wrong on this, and we, as a public and as society, have to stop this man from expanding the NCAA tournament. First of all, what I would say is his logic for expanding makes no sense, and it's actually factually incorrect, right? So I'm not, I think one thing that I do okay is I understand why certain things happen if it is good for the product and good for the growth of whatever, right? So as an example, I get why Roger Goodell in the NFL added a Monday night playoff game and added more teams and added more this and added more that. We've had wild card teams win the Super Bowl. We've had wild card teams make the Super Bowl. So I get the argument for that. What I would also say, though, is Greg Sankey's argument that we need to expand the NCAA tournament because we are leaving teams out that can potentially win. Not only is that whatever, it's just factually incorrect, okay? And if you listen to this show year-round, you know that this is one of my favorite rants. Because every February in college basketball, in the NCAA tournament, or leading into the NCAA tournament, what is the thing that you hear from everybody who covers this sport? From Jay Billis, from Dick Vitale, from whoever. What do you hear every single February? Oh, this is what you hear. And I'm going to pause for dramatic effect. Besides Jay Billis saying, that's a foul. That's a foul. What you hear is this. Every February, what do we hear? We hear, well, this tournament is as wide open as I can ever remember it. There's 20 or 25 or 30 teams that can win it all this year. I truly believe that. And that's my sort of Jay Billis voice. But he says that all the time. Dick Vitale says that all the time. And what do I tell you all the time on this show? That is absolute baloney. And it is absolute baloney that in college basketball, we are leaving teams out of the NCAA tournament that are good enough to win it. College baseballs may be different. I know I joke about being a college baseball guy every once in a while, and I cannot speak to how that tournament works. I love college baseball, but I watch it about 1-2 weeks a year. I can't speak to how college baseball works. But what I can tell you is we are definitively not leaving teams out of the NCAA tournament that can win it all. How do I know that? Well, we have the facts to back it up. Every year when guys or girls say that this is the most wide open tournament I can ever remember, what do I tell you? No, it's not. Here are the facts. And I use this fact every single year, and I'm going to keep using it until I'm proved wrong. Since 2007, so that is now 15 NCAA tournaments. It would be 16 if the 2020 tournament when it wasn't canceled. Every year we hear it's wide open. Well, of the last 15 NCAA tournaments, here are the facts. 12 of those 15 have been won by a number one seed. So you can have a 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 seed, 11 seed get to a Final Four. You can have a 6, 7, 8, 9 seed make an Elite Eight. But of the last 15 NCAA tournaments, 12 have been won by a number one seed. Of the 3 NCAA tournaments that were not won by a number one seed, one was Villanova in 2016. They were the top number 2 seed, Big East regular season champ, Big East tournament champ, go to a Final Four, win a national championship as the top number 2 seed. The other 2, my alma mater, UConn in 2011 with Kemba Walker and 2014 with Shabazz Napier. Both of those guys were the best players in the NCAA tournament. So the idea that we are leaving teams out that can win it, there's just no proof to back up that that's the case. If there was proof and we could definitively say that, then I would say, yes, let's expand it because I don't want somebody sitting at home that's good enough to win it. But in the last 15 NCAA tournaments, we have concrete, indisputable data. If you are not a top 5 team or have the best player in the tournament, you're not winning. You might be able to make an Elite Eight, a Sweet 16, a Final Four. You're not winning the NCAA tournament. So if Greg Sankey's logic made sense, I would at least consider it. But his logic is factually flawed and incorrect. 2, it goes to just the bigger picture, which is what I know you're all thinking when you hear a story like this. Why I don't want it expanded is because the NCAA tournament is the perfect sporting event. Why do you have to mess with perfect, Greg Sankey? Why do you have to mess with perfect? And when I look at the NCAA tournament, listen, I understand college basketball, 365 days a year is not the biggest sport in America. I understand that college basketball, for many people, probably not people who listen to this show, but for many people across the country, it's a sport that they pick up in February, late February, early March into the NCAA tournament. But the NCAA tournament itself is perfect. Yes, there's the 4 play-in games on Tuesday and Wednesday. It's a little bit of an appetizer, but then we have the perfect setup for the rest of the weekend. You have all day Thursday, all day Friday, all day Saturday, all day Sunday. We plan our events around it. We plan our vacations around it. We plan our vacation time around it. That first Thursday, you're either at the bar with your friends, you're at the sports book. Some of you maybe take a trip to Vegas that weekend, and it is the perfect setup, perfect long weekend. But what I would also say is to add teams would be to mess it up. First of all, you basically go straight from the conference tournaments into the NCAA tournament on Tuesday. But what I would say is, I think I love college basketball as much as anybody. We don't need more NCAA tournament games. One, because we're not going to have teams that we want to see, which we'll get into in a minute. But two, beyond that, it just messes with the structure of everything, right? Why the NCAA tournament is perfect is for a few reasons. One, it involves everybody. Even if your team's not in it, you can fill out a bracket. You can compete against your friends. Now with sports betting being more prominent, you can go to the sports book, throw a few bucks down. But like I said, you have Thursday, you have Friday, you have Saturday. By Sunday, everybody's drained. Now you want to start this thing on Tuesday and play 8 games on Tuesday and then 8 games on Wednesday just to get to the main bracket? Listen, people are having enough trouble getting off Thursday and Friday of this thing. Now you're asking them to watch basketball all day Tuesday, all day Wednesday just to get to the main bracket? This thing is perfect as it is. We do not need to expand it further. Listen, I'll say this. Even like the college football playoff. Now, I like the college football playoff at 4. I've kind of accepted that it's expanding, but I can at least acknowledge that it's far from a perfect sporting event, and it does need some sort of tweaking one way or another. Now, I'm not in favor of going to 16 because I don't think there's 12 teams in college football that are missing the playoff that can win it, but I know the college football playoff is not a perfect format. The NCAA tournament is a perfect format, though, and that is what frustrates me the most. Is that beyond the fact that Greg Sankey is using factually incorrect, flawed data to make his argument, on top of it, why are you trying to mess up a perfect event? And then I think 3, when I sit here and look at it, what especially bothers me about the concept of expanding is it's not as though we are going to get teams that anybody wants to see. We are not going to get, if we add another, whatever it would be, 12 teams to this NCAA tournament, we know who it's going to be. It's not going to be the small schools. It's not going to be the little guys. It's going to be the 11th best team from the SEC, the 14th best team from the Big Ten, the 9th best team in an 11-team Big East. Like, it is going to be the teams that nobody wants to watch. And you know who nobody wants? You know who doesn't want to watch them? And I talk about this all the time. Even their own fans. If you're 15-13 in a power conference, you do not deserve to be competing at the highest level for a championship. I'm sorry. It's just the facts. It's just the truth. I'll take it a step further. It was interesting, right? Because in the article, Greg Sankey references that Texas A&M, who for people who forget, they made it to the SEC championship game in college basketball this year. And I think everybody thought they were going to get in, and they were one of like the first 2 or 3 teams out of the NCAA tournament. And so Greg Sankey uses them as an example of, well, that's a team that should have been in the NCAA tournament. Now, I think they should have been in the NCAA tournament, but I also don't think that you can really argue that you were like totally, completely snubbed out of this thing when, oh, by the way, I'm looking at their schedule from last year right now. This is Texas A&M. You know, I have an immense amount of respect for Buzz Williams. Guess what? Texas A&M, right in the heart of SEC play, lost 7 straight games. They did not win a game from January 15th until February 15th. And also, they then lost a game after that to Vanderbilt. So over the course of, 9 games, they lose 8 of them, including 7 in a row, went over a month without a win. I'm sorry, you can't tell me that's a team that definitively deserved to be in, let alone could win it. And so that's my biggest problem with this on top of everything else. Besides the fact that it's this perfect event, you're just going to add teams that nobody wants to see. A&M had their chance during the regular season. They lost 7 straight games. They lost 8 of 9 games. They went a month without winning a game. That is not a team that got robbed. That is not a team to cry tears in the street for. I'm sorry, it's just not. And so to me, I don't like this. And what it speaks to more than anything, is the idea of something that I keep talking about on this show. And it's so disappointing and it's so frustrating, but it is also reality. And it is that the people that are currently in charge of college sports, their sole goal is to make the single most money they possibly can. I don't know why I stuttered there, tripped over my own words. Rather than what is for the good of college sports. Now, I understand at the end of the day, Greg Sankey's job is not to look out for 360-something Division I men's basketball teams and 131 FBS football teams. I understand that his job is to make the most amount of money that he can for the SEC. I get that. I understand that ultimately that is his job as the SEC commissioner, and I respect the concept of continuing to create revenue wherever you can for your constituents. I own a business. I understand you got to make money, right? I'm always constantly thinking, how do I grow my business? How do I grow this? How do I grow Aaron Torres Media? But at the end of the day, I do think there is a line of demarcation where you can expand for the sake of making money and also hurt your product at the same time. And I think that's the constant push-pull right now in college sports. I think it's a constant push-pull with any business, but the business that I'm talking about right now is college sports. We're going to talk about it in a minute, but I think this is kind of where Notre Dame is right now. Notre Dame is like, we can make the most money possible by joining the Big Ten, but we have to sell a part of our soul to do it, or we can make a little bit less money to go ahead and stay independent and be who we are and stay true to 100 years of football tradition. I think they're struggling with that right now, and I do think that sports sometimes, right now, specifically college sports, you're making these decisions to make the most possible money while not thinking about the long-term side effects and how it impacts your fans. I'll give you a quick side story, and then we'll wrap on this topic. But think about what's going on in Major League Baseball right now. You know, it's amazing. I started watching that Derek Jeter documentary. It's awesome. And you forget how awesome baseball was and how big it felt 10, 15, 20 years ago. It doesn't feel that way anymore. And part of why I don't think it feels that way is because Major League Baseball over the last 20 years, everything has been about making the most money possible, the biggest dollar amount possible, even if it is at the sacrifice of the fans. What's the biggest issue? Not the biggest issue, but what's a topic in baseball right now? They got these Friday night games on Apple Plus and these games over here, and MLB Network has some of the, and people can't even find their games. And so, yes, Major League Baseball is making the most possible money for those 30 Major League teams, and I'm sure the owners are happy. But is it for the good of baseball? Is it for the growth of baseball? Is the best thing for baseball starting World Series games at 8:30 when kids can't stay up? And so I just bring it up to say, whether it is college sports, whether it is Major League Baseball, whether it is a business that you're familiar with, every business has to kind of find that sweet spot of, yes, we have to make money. Yes, we have to pay the bills. Yes, we have to make revenue. And in a perfect world, we want to make the most money possible. But at what point are we sacrificing the quality of the product for our consumers? That's what I'm worried about with some of the college football stuff, and that's definitely what I'm worried about with this NCAA tournament. Listen, Greg Sankey, I looked it up today. He's about 57, 58 years old. He's probably on the back 4, 5, 6 years of his career right now, right? I mean, he's probably got, another 7, 8 years in college sports, and then he's done. And I just sit there and wonder, in 2, 3, 5, 10 years, he's going to look back and say, man, I made those SEC schools a lot of money. But is he doing what is best for college sports? That I don't know, and I certainly don't know if he has visions of expanding the NCAA tournament. I really do hope that whoever is the people, whether it is us as fans, whether it is people like myself in the media that have some sort of platform, I do hope people continue to speak up. The NCAA tournament is perfect the way it is. It might be the only sporting event that's perfect the way that it is. We don't need to change it. We don't need to suck every single dollar that we can out of this thing. There's a lot of money to go around. These SEC schools are not struggling to find money. They're not going through the couch cushions to pay the bills. And I hope we stand up, and I hope people continue to push back on Greg.